Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the procession of the Slovak Academy of Sciences. Thank you. Good morning. It is an honor and privilege to welcome you on behalf of the President of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, Professor Fitzgeraldovi, here at the Hall of Mirrors at the Primatial Palace for the award ceremony of the 2023 International Prize of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, which will be awarded for achievements in social sciences and humanities. My name is Tomáš Hromadka. Here I represent the Academy, and I will also be a guide during the ceremony. I am especially grateful that I can welcome our distinguished guests, Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald from City University of London, Your Excellencies Ambassadors, members of Slovak Parliament, distinguished representatives of the Statistical Office of the Slovak Republic, Trnava Self-Governing Region, and the Office of Mayor of Bratislava. Distinguished representatives of the Catholic Church and representatives of the Office of the President of the Slovak Republic, State Secretaries, distinguished representatives of Slovak universities and Polish and Hungarian academies of sciences, members of the Assembly, the Scientific Council, the Presidium, and the Council of Directors of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, and members of the Learned Society of Slovakia. Ladies and gentlemen, in 1805, after the Battle of Austerlitz, in this very room, the so-called Peace of Pressburg was signed. As one of the consequences, the Holy Roman Emperor Francis II was slightly downgraded to Francis I, the first Emperor of Austria. You might have noticed his Roman-style bust on the staircase outside this hall when you were entering. This is very obviously not related to the ceremony at all. But this does make this hall a hall of great historical significance. And today we hope to add a bit more of the significance by celebrating exceptional scientific achievements of an outstanding scholar who will be awarded the International Prize of the Slovak Academy of Sciences. Now let us begin the ceremony itself with music. We are very fortunate that we have with us today the Bucha Quartet, an internationally acclaimed string quartet who will now perform a light-hearted musical piece suitable for social occasions, Divertimento in B-flat major, the second part Allegro di molto by none other than Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Bucha Quartet. That was a magnificent performance, and I can see on your faces that many of you have enjoyed it as well. Now let's proceed with the ceremony itself. Having received the nomination from the Center of Social and Psychological Sciences, the Scientific Council of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, in recognition of outstanding work related to Slovakia, awards the 2023 International Prize of the Slovak Academy of Sciences in Social Sciences and Humanities to Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald from City University of London. I would like to ask Zuzana Pancová, our Vice President for International Relations, to deliver a laudation for Professor Rorymu.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, today Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald receives the 2023 International Award of the Slovak Academy of Sciences for his outstanding high-impact research and methodology of social survey. He studied European politics at the University of Wales and has received Doctor of Philosophy degree in sociology from the City University in London. He was the director of the National Centre for Social Research. Since 2013, he is the director of the Centre for Comparative Social Surveys, a world-leading cross-national survey research infrastructure, and since 2017, he is the professor of the practice in survey research at City University in London. In 2013, he established the European Research Infrastructure Consortium and currently serves as its director, chief executive officer, and chief scientific officer. From 14-member European governments, the consortium has blossomed to 28 members and one observer in 2022. It has a significant academic and teaching impact, and its findings have directly influenced both policy and society. This consortium is listed on the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructures in Europe as a landmark research infrastructure. Professor Fitzgerald has also spearheaded organization of several scientific conferences of Visegrad countries in 2014, 2018, and 2022. The conferences created ideal opportunities for discussing the emerging social issues even beyond this Visegrad region. One of the main aims of the European Research Infrastructure Consortium is to practice and promote the highest scientific standards in cross-national comparative research in social sciences. This enables Slovak researchers to learn, follow, and apply top-level methodological and research procedures in their scientific work. Since 2003, European social survey data in Slovakia were collected in 7 rounds. All such social survey data on living conditions, social structure, public opinions, and attitudes within and between European countries are available for free. The data obtained as part of European Social Survey does serve as an excellent social science laboratory. Currently, there are over 215,000 registered users worldwide, almost 600 users from Slovakia, and over 6,000 publications have used data so far. Professor Fitzgerald coordinated the Synergies for Europe's research infrastructures in the Social Sciences project, undertaking cutting-edge methodological research in cross-national survey methodology and drawing together research infrastructures from across social sciences. He is currently coordinating a Horizon 2020 grant to prepare transition of European social survey methods from a face-to-face in-home survey to a new self-completion methodology in 2027, which would represent a significant transformation of the field. I think it is now clear that Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald is a leading expert in survey research, research design, as well as questionnaire design and pre-testing, and it is a very successful coordinator of scientific grants. On top of everything, he has a truly prolific publication record, has attracted millions of euros in research funding, and has demonstrated excellent leadership at the national and international levels. For his contributions, he was also awarded the 2005 Descartes Prize for Excellence in Collaborative Scientific Research and the 2020 Liebhardt-Przeworski Verba Best Dataset Award by the American Political Science Association. Ladies and gentlemen, in recognition of the invaluable contributions of Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald to the advancement of social sciences and of his long-term cooperation with the Slovak scientists, the Scientific Board of the Slovak Academy of Sciences has decided to award him the 2023 International Prize of the Slovak Academy of Sciences. Congratulations.
And now, to add a bit of a personal touch, I would like to ask Denisa Fedakova, the director of the Center for Social and Psychological Sciences of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, to provide us with a few remarks about Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am here with a more personal explanation why we nominated Professor Fitzgerald for the International Prize of Slovak Academy of Sciences. Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald has been involved and engaged with the European Social Survey for over 20 years. And during this period, he became more and more attached to it, and I wouldn't hesitate to say that he breathes for it. And as a director of the world's most rigorous social survey, he continuously emphasizes the importance and team cooperation and support within this prestigious project. His sense for teamwork was also present in his response to the email informing him that he was the laureate of the International Prize of Slovak Academy of Sciences. He replied, "It's a great honor for me to receive this award, and I am absolutely delighted. It has always been a source of great pride for me to work closely with my colleagues in Slovakia in the context of European Social Survey." By the way, once mentioning European Social Survey in Slovakia, it's my pleasure to tell you that in 2023, when we are celebrating Professor Fitzgerald being awarded by the International Prize of Slovak Academy of Sciences, we are also celebrating an anniversary. It has been 20 years since the European Social Survey is nationally coordinated in Slovakia. It has been about 20 years of support and cooperation between Professor Fitzgerald and the national ESS team based at the Institute of Social Sciences in Košice. More specifically, Professor Fitzgerald has played an important role in ensuring the continuation of the European Social Survey, and without his relentless effort and intervention at both the S3 and the national level, Slovakia's participation in this excellent cross-national survey would not have been achieved. More personally, I would like to add that Professor Fitzgerald has always been active and friendly collegial contact with the Slovak ESS team. He has participated in national ESS conferences and has also contributed significantly to enhancing awareness of all support of the Slovak national team, and Slovakia became a member of the ESS European Consortium Infrastructure in 2018. For all these contributions and activities, I am very pleased that this year the Gallery of Awards for the European Social Survey, and especially for Professor Fitzgerald, will be extended by the International Prize of Slovak Academy of Sciences. Professor Fitzgerald, dear Rory, congratulations to you.
We'll switch briefly back to music. Our second musical performance today will be an excellent and lovely piece by an English composer, Edward Elgar. The Vďaka Quartet will greet us with love and perform his Salute Diablo. Thank you. And now I would like to ask the President of the Academy, Professor Fitzgerald, to present the 2023 International Prize of the Slovak Academy of Sciences in Social Sciences and Humanities to Professor Rorymu Fitzgerald. Please note that the prize itself has been designed by Marian Lašák from the Academy of Fine Arts and Design and produced by the Institute of Materials and Machine Mechanics of the Slovak Academy of Sciences under the supervision of František Simančík, himself a member of the Presidium of the Academy.
Be careful. It's my better this way. It's my great honor to give you the gate, which has two sides, in and out. And I hope so that the International Prize of Slovak Academy of Sciences is something which make the friendship in both sides.
Thank you, Mr. President. Definitely for friendship.
So now, as the award has been handed over and properly documented, the table is at your disposal and the floor is yours to deliver your lecture. Thank you.
Good afternoon. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today, and I'm truly honoured to have received the International Prize from the Slovak Academy of Sciences. Certainly be a day I will look back for the whole of my life on with great pleasure. I think, as my colleague Denisa Fedoroka mentioned at the beginning, for me it is a personal pleasure to have received this award, but it is also recognition of the European Social Survey and what we've all achieved together from across the 30 and more participating countries in the project. And it's been a real pleasure to be able to support my colleagues in the Slovak Republic in their journey to maintaining participation and also to becoming a full member of the European Research Infrastructure Consortium. One of the other things which I think is of note of the award to someone in my own position with my own career trajectory is that what I've been doing and what we've been doing in the European Social Survey over 20 or more years is building a research infrastructure. So we're building a resource for scientists all over the world to use to support their own excellent research. And for us in the central team of the ESS, what brings most pleasure is to see the keen interest, the use of the data, the publications, and the policy impact of what we have all produced together. I arrived on Sunday and yesterday morning was able to give a public lecture, and what was particularly nice then, after the lecture, was to speak to young scientists from the Slovak Republic who were interested in using the data in their own scientific research, their own PhDs, and their own future publications. Just like to take one moment before I proceed to remember the founder director of the European Social Survey, Professor Sir Roger Jowell, who was my personal mentor and gave me great support in my own career trajectory. Without his forethought and foresight and determination, there wouldn't have been a European Social Survey in those early years, and we wouldn't have been able to celebrate the achievements that we are today. What I'd like to do in the time I have available is give a little bit of an overview about the aims and background of the European Social Survey infrastructure, give you a little bit of flavour of what is in the content of the questionnaire that we use, outline a few results from the European Social Survey, and also look a little bit to the future of the infrastructure. The European Social Survey itself came about in a very much a bottom-up process. Scholars across Europe, particularly in political science, but also in sociology, were finding it very difficult to make good, accurate cross-national comparisons using social survey data. And the reasons for that were that surveys were done in such different ways in the participating countries, comparisons were difficult, if not impossible, to make. Often questionnaire design was rushed, sampling designs were not equivalent, translation was reliant on unhelpful back translation processes, and data was often not well documented and structured in a way that facilitated open access. And so two scholars, Roger Jowell and Max Kaza, came up with the idea that there should be an input harmonised, well-coordinated cross-national general social survey. That idea went to the European Science Foundation, where there were representatives from all the countries in Europe from the social science research councils. And they backed that idea, and the European Commission responded in kind and opened a route for the central coordination costs of the ESS to be funded, as long as there were at least 10 countries who would fund their own national costs. That project was successful, and in the end, over 20 countries participated in the first round. And since then, the European Social Survey has gone from strength to strength. It was awarded the Descartes Prize, that was noted before, for comparative research. It's on the European Strategy Forum for Research Infrastructure's roadmap, which I will return to in a moment. And it became a European Research Infrastructure Consortium in 2013. And that's an organisation that consists of now 28 member countries, represented by their research ministries. And the host country and lead country, the United Kingdom, who have been a significant supporter of the European Social Survey since its formative years. And in particular, I'd like to thank the support of the UK Economic and Social Research Council. Without their support in those early years, the ESS would not have become as strong as it is today. And also just some words here from my predecessor, Sir Roger Jowell. He talked about the importance for governments of having high quality data about citizens' preference and needs to help counteract what he perhaps saw as ignorance with that not being available. And I think we can now say we have created a data set to counter that gap. I wanted to mention the European Strategy Forum on Research Infrastructures. This is an interministerial organisation across the European Union and associated countries that has a roadmap, a list of research infrastructures which have reached a significant level of scientific and organisational excellence that they can be called for support from national governments across Europe. And the ESS has been on this roadmap since 2006, and in 2016 became a landmark infrastructure in recognition of its maturity. This status of being on the roadmap has been crucial and was critical as well in the Slovakian context in securing the support of the government to join the ESS ERIC in 2018. Most recently, ESFRI has just monitored the European Social Survey. All their landmark infrastructures are being monitored, and in particular, the monitoring report noted the exceptionally high methodological and scientific standards in data collection. And those standards were put in place to reverse those kind of difficulties of the past, of poor coordination, poor scientific methods, to have that more coordinated, harmonised approach that creates a data set which is simple and easy to access and utilise. The questionnaire itself has two key components. The first is a core questionnaire where many of the questions are repeated every 2 years in our biennial surveys. And the idea here is to provide a rich data set that's useful for different disciplines and those with different research interests, but also to enable comparisons across those domains as well. So there are questions on political trust, attitudes to immigration, climate change, well-being, health, and many others in our core questionnaire, which are repeated every 2 years. In addition to that, there's a really rich set of demographic information. So we put a lot of effort, for example, into how to measure highest level of education across countries. And this is something that's really improved over the lifetime of the ESS, where now the approach that we use is often copied by other organisations like the OECD and other cross-national surveys. And our national teams, including our colleagues in Slovakia, put a lot of time and effort into how we devise those lists, highest levels of education, and how we collapse those lists into a single code frame that allows comparative analysis. In addition to that core questionnaire, we facilitate 2 rotating modules, and these are modules that are designed by teams of academics across Europe who win a competition, an open competition that's held every 2 years. On this slide you can see the rotating modules which have been selected in the first 10 rounds of the European Social Survey. They include a detailed module, for example, in the first round on immigration that was then repeated in the 7th round, and in fact will be repeated in our 12th round with a subset of questions also about attitudes towards refugees. There's been a module on climate change. We have a health inequalities module that's been asked in the past and is being repeated now post-pandemic. This competition has a lot of interest, there's a high number of applications and a considerable academic rigour in the way in which we design and develop the questions. This map here shows the questions which have participated in the European Social Survey. Countries have dipped in a little bit in and out in the early years of the ESS as they had to raise their own funding for taking part in the infrastructure. But as we've become a European Research Infrastructure Consortium, participation has stabilised across the rounds. A couple of things to note here. Cooperation with Russia is currently suspended, but I am delighted to say that we will be, with our colleagues in Kyiv, running the European Social Survey in Ukraine later this year in the government-controlled areas, again with the generous support of the UK Economic and Social Research Council for that work. And you can see that there's a wide group of countries, both EU member states and others beyond the European Union as well, that are participating in the survey. And the ERIC itself now has 28 formal members, which is the highest number of national members of any European Research Infrastructure Consortium in Europe. At the heart of the European Social Survey are our national coordinators. In Slovakia, that's Denisa Vodoka and Michael Kentos, who are both here today. Here you can see a picture of our national coordinators from one of our meetings in London. And you can see that there's a large group. These meetings can get quite lively, particularly when we're discussing the questionnaire, and there are different opinions on the crucial elements to include and how to ask questions well cross-nationally. But our national coordinators really are at the heart of our project. Without them and their determination and willingness to be flexible about methods, we wouldn't have a European social survey. And this is why national participation is really important. Including as many countries from the European Union is important about illuminating the development of the European project. And that's of course why having the Slovak Republic included was particularly beneficial to the project. But it's also helpful, for example, in looking at new candidate countries that might be wanting to join the European Union. And I know, for example, there's colleagues here today from North Macedonia, and we are really hoping that they might be our 29th member, having participated before as a guest country. More countries also creates a richer data set in terms of the national differences that analysts can then look at. It also can help strengthen the social science research base. Many countries in Europe don't have their own social survey. ESS has filled that gap, but it also filters down into the research infrastructure, the research ecosystem, encouraging the next generation of scholars to enjoy data and learn about quantitative methods of analysis and collection. In the Slovak Republic itself, the project has been generously funded by the Ministry of Education, Science, Research and Sport of the Slovak Republic, and we're very grateful for their support for the European Social Survey over many years. And it's coordinated by a national team formed of the Centre of Social and Psychological Sciences and the Institute of Social Sciences. And we're very, very grateful to all of those colleagues in Slovakia who are part of the European Social Survey. And in fact, our fieldwork for the 11th round has been getting underway in recent weeks. So I'd also like to pay a particular thanks to the field interviewers who are going out at the moment in Slovakia and other countries in Europe, doing that difficult job of knocking on doors, persuading people to take part in the survey, and collecting the data in an effective and scientific way. Also, lots of input and use of the data in the Slovak Republic. Slovak Academy of Sciences regularly uses the data as a source for the media. And in fact, we were doing some interviews before this about the project, which again will appear in the media. National team members are regularly producing reports and conference papers. And there's recently been, for example, some special issues in the Journal of Individual and Society. And the national team here has also been involved in some of our methodological research that we've been doing recently on new data collection methods. So is it worth all of the investment in something like the European Social Survey, the many millions of euros, the many hours that are put into it? This is judged often at the S3 level and elsewhere by the impact of the infrastructure. And the number of email addresses that have been registered on the European Social Survey website really has been a source of initially great surprise, but more recently also great pride, reaching now over 220,000 registered users since we made data first available in 2003. And there are very few, I think, other social science data sets in the world that have such high interest. 70% of these users are students, 16% faculty in research, and 6% PhDs, with the remainder coming from the media and policy as well. And as was noted in the opening comments, around 600 users of the survey are in Slovakia. And ESS does make it into the media. Around 50 or so mentions of the ESS per month are appearing in the media, according to our most recent media monitoring. And this is excluding academic articles. This is just ESS appearing in the media. And you can see a spike there where there's particular interest in some of our data in the United Kingdom about attitudes to the exit of the UK from the European Union. But data appearing across many countries in Europe over time. And the publications now are around 350 to 400 or so academic journal articles appearing per year using the ESS and other publications as well. So a really cross-national research infrastructure that has wide reach and scientific impact. And we've most recently also conducted a little bit of an impact case study, and our colleagues at the EFIS Centre looked into the Overton database, which is a database of policy references. And here we see the European Social Survey appearing, for example, in over almost 400 publications of the European Union, and that's most particularly in DG for Employment, Social Affairs and Inclusion, and the Director General for Research and Innovation as well. But you can see ESS data also appearing in policy documents from other countries, for example in Switzerland and in Sweden and many others. And this is something we'd like to see grow even more in the future, where high quality academic outputs are feeding into the policy process. Our 10th round was the most difficult, I think, in the history of the European Social Survey. So our surveys are based around face-to-face with in-home interviews that last approximately 1 hour. And you can imagine that with COVID there were many disruptions to that process, some of which are going to have a long-term impact on the ESS itself. So our 10th round is now complete and the data is available for download. In some countries, this required a data collection switch. So we were no longer able to ask the ESS questionnaires using face-to-face fieldwork, but instead asked people to fill that in either online or on a paper self-completion booklet. And that will become the future way in which we collect data in the ESS, as face-to-face data infrastructure around Europe kind of ends and we move, ideally in the long run, to a digital collection, but in the meantime with a mixed mode data collection. And in our 10th round, in addition to our standard modules, we also had some special COVID modules, including some questions dealing with sort of attitudes around conspiracy theories. And I'm going to show a few of those findings now, along with just some tasters of the kind of results that you can see from the ESS. As there are elections coming up in the Slovak Republic this weekend, I'm not going to look at trust in politicians and political institutions today, but I will have a look here at trust in scientists. And what I can tell you is that trust in scientists all over Europe is considerably higher than it often is for politicians. In Slovakia, it's 6.39 on an 11-point scale, compared very similarly to Hungary and Poland, for example, but a bit lower than perhaps you might find in Spain, where trust is a little bit higher. We then asked our respondents whether they felt that there were groups of scientists who manipulate, fabricate, or suppress evidence in order to deceive the public. And this was around the COVID time, when of course there was a lot of focus on conspiracy theories. And here in the Slovak Republic we found 32% of our respondents agreed with that, considerably lower than, for example, in Macedonia or Bulgaria, where it's close to 50%. But much lower in Sweden, where just 10% agreed with that statement. So there really are some questions about how we can ensure in the future that there's greater trust in science. And also feeding further into the conspiracy theory area, we also asked our respondents whether they thought there was a small secret group of people responsible for making all decisions in world politics. And 37% of those in Slovakia agreed with that. In the UK, that was around 25%. And you can see here quite significant differences across the countries, with the red agree line at the bottom showing the varying differences of agreement there. So that was a special module which we included in our 10th round, but we're also focusing on other key societal challenges. So we've included some questions from a special longer module in the ESS on climate change in our core questionnaire. Here you can see in the lower line the data from 2016, 2017, and in the higher line the data from 2020 to 22. And here you can see overall in all of the countries in the ESS an increase in those who say that they do have a personal responsibility to reduce climate change. There's no entry for Slovakia here, unfortunately, in the 8th round, because that was before participation was formally confirmed. But in the 10th round in Slovakia, the mean here was similar to Czechia across the border, around 4.87 to 4.32. But what's interesting particularly here is that the pattern is the same in all countries. You can see that personal responsibility for taking action on climate change increasing. One of the things people often ask is, well, how is a country or our countries changing? Now, there's a lot of data in this graph. I don't expect you to be able to see every line, but what there generally is here is a consistent pattern across all the countries, or most of the countries in the ESS, with a proportion of younger respondents saying that they belong to a religion or denomination has decreased compared to older people. So in Slovakia, around 2/3 of those 15 to 35-year-old say they are part of religion, compared to 81% of those 65 and older. And in Czechia, it was only 9% of those 15 to 35 who said that they belong to a religion. It's not the case everywhere, though. In North Macedonia and Montenegro, for example, the youngest are as likely as the oldest to say that they are part of a religion or denomination. But overall, the pattern is clear. Most countries, younger Europeans, are less likely to have this religious affiliation. Doesn't necessarily mean they don't have religion in other ways, and we have other questions in our survey, like attendance at religious services. We have questions on how religious you might feel, whether you pray privately. But at least in terms of formal participation in religion, we see this pattern. This is another way of looking at the data. Here we combine the countries into different regional blocks across Europe, and this looks at attitudes towards immigration across time in the ESS, from 2002 right through to 2022. Combined scores from all the countries across the region over time, and what is the measure that's underlying this? It's 3 items that are combined. So whether immigration is good or bad for a country's economy, whether a country's cultural life is undermined or enriched by having immigrants in a country, and whether immigrants make a country a worse or better place to live. So often we don't rely on a single measure, but we combine measures to reduce over-reliance on a single item that can be problematic across time. And here you can see, particularly in Eastern Europe, in 2016, 2017, there was a worsening, more negative attitudes towards immigrants, and a more positive picture in recent times. And here we often see that sometimes the data that we collect in the European Social Survey can be somewhat different to the narrative in the media, for example. But it will be really interesting in our next round to look at the repeat module on immigration, where we really break that down into far more detail, and we'll also be looking specifically at the issue of refugees. How am I doing for time?
You're doing just fine.
Okay, just wanted to check. Just to give a few other examples of the kind of data that ESS has been used for. This chart here shows the percentage who say that they feel unsafe walking alone in their local area after dark. Here you can see the differences between male and female respondents in the ESS. And on the far side, where you can see, for example, Norway, Slovenia, Finland, Iceland, and Croatia, you see lower levels overall of a fear of safety, but also quite a small gap between male and female respondents and how safe they feel walking alone in their area. But in other countries, taking Greece, for example, at the other end, but also, for example, in the UK, you see much bigger differences between how men and women perceive the safety in their local area. There's been a lot of focus on this in the United Kingdom in the last years, with women in particular fighting for much greater recognition of the way in which they feel safe or otherwise in their local areas. And in the United Kingdom, my own home country, 39% of women said that they felt unsafe in their local area compared to just 9% of men. And this was an example of a question that when there was lots of focus in the media in the UK on the topic of women's safety, there was a lot of interest also in our data. Here we can see, again, a consistent pattern across countries on the differences between emotional attachment to your own country and emotional attachment to Europe. So the question was Europe as general overall continent, not the European Union. That was the wording. And here you see differences between countries on these two measures. In all countries, the sense of attachment to your own country is definitely higher to Europe, but you see some significant differences between countries here. So you can see that, for example, in non-EU country, Israel and also in Serbia, you see some of the lowest attachment to Europe, non-EU countries. Greece and Cyprus have the biggest gap, interestingly, between European and national identity. So again, we use the ESS questionnaire to focus on identity as well. And the last example I'm going to give today is on a question from one of our demography modules. And this chart here looks at the mean age when people become adults. Adulthood arrives earlier for women than men in almost all countries. Comparing the United Kingdom, for example, and Slovakia, the average score that people said women become adults in the UK was 18, but it was higher in Slovakia at 20. And another thing that we see here in most but not all countries, we see adulthood arriving slightly later in our 2018 to 19 round compared to 2006 and 7. And in many countries, this feeds into the narrative of younger Europeans finding it more difficult to leave home, to become self-sufficient, and to perhaps have a home of their own. There were some tasters. Anyone who was more interested, our data is freely available for download to you afterwards, after a very short online registration. Now, just looking a little bit ahead to the future of the infrastructure, one of the things we've been developing in 12 of our countries, hopefully to include Slovakia in the future, is an online probability-based panel. We ask respondents at the end of their main interview with us, will you do further surveys with us every 2 or 3 months or so? And surprisingly, perhaps many of them actually do agree to do that, and we already have their ESS data. So then we can ask them shorter modules. And we've included questions here on vaccination hesitancy, more questions on climate change, questions on populism, mental health, trust in science, redistribution, and many other topics. And there really is a hope that in the future we can further build this panel, include more countries with larger sample sizes, and perhaps starting to append other data as well to that. ESS has been known for its methodology, its excellence in face-to-face data collection. But we really are at a crossroads now in terms of our future, and I think we're going to have one of the biggest changes in the history of the infrastructure coming up within the next few years. In COVID, some countries couldn't use face-to-face data collection, but since the pandemic, many agencies are struggling to recruit new interviewers, and the capacity for face-to-face data collection in the social sciences in future is declining, in some cases even collapsing rather rapidly. So we're going to build on the knowledge that we've learned through the pandemic times and move all countries to a mixture of self-completion paper interviews and online interviews. It's too soon to move the ESS only online because there are significant proportions of the population in many countries who are not yet using the internet regularly. So all of our countries are going through a rapid transformation and testing these new methods, and our colleagues in the Slovak Republic are currently testing these new methods in the current context of Slovakia. And there can be many complications. For example, can you send letters to addresses in all countries? Is there a sample frame that facilitates knowing names of individuals in advance, and so forth? And it would be really helpful for the future of the ESS in Slovakia if in the future there could be access to the population register for high quality scientific research, as there are in some other countries in Europe. Also looking ahead to the future, ESS is involved in coordinating a number of Horizon 2020 projects. And in fact, we've most recently also been awarded a new project which will be starting next year, a €10 million Horizon Europe project that will be looking at how to address EU policy priorities with the next generation EU theme. And this will be a pan infrastructure project, so we'll be working with the European Values Survey and the Gender and Generations Project, and across many different data sources to try to get more social science data directly to the heart of policy making. So I think the infrastructure is in a strong position, and it really in the end does come back to the people, the scientists in the countries who have really pushed for that membership and that participation. And it was always a pleasure to come to Slovak Republic to work with Denisa Vďaka and Michael Kentos, the national coordinators. Also in the past, the earliest national coordinator, Joseph Frost, who was the coordinator between 2002 and 2018. And I'd like to thank the other team members of the national coordination team who are listed here, and of course the president of the Slovak Academy of Sciences and the scientific board for this very special award. It really is a deep honour, not only for me, I think, but for the ESS overall and the national team here. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I look forward to speaking to some of you after the presentation in the reception.
Thank you very much for your illuminating talk. I think, as for myself, you can increase the number of sociologists in the room. Thank you. Thank you again. Thank you very much. And the award ceremony will now conclude with another musical performance. This time, Mucha Quartet will perform the finals part of String Quartet number 4 in G major by Mikuláš Mojzes. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, now on behalf of the President of the Slovak Academy of Sciences, Professor Fitzgeraldovi, I would like to extend thanks to all for you coming and attending the award ceremony, especially to the award recipient himself and artists for their marvelous performances. I would like to thank you all for coming and celebrating science with us today. After the ceremony, please do not run away, but rather accept our invitation to a reception, which will be held downstairs at the mezzanine. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again, and please rise for the procession of the Slovak Academy of Sciences.